welcome back to another episode of 6 and 6, where we cover 6 stories from around the world in 6 minutes or less. With that said, start your timer. We open in Britain, where there is a suspected attack on a former Russian agent and his daughter. From the BBC, quote, former Russian spy Sergei Spirkov, Paul, and his daughter, Yulia, were exposed to a deadly nerve agent, Novichok, in Salisbury in March 2018. Neil Busso, who led the counterterrorism investigation, said the true horror of the, quote, colorless and odorless poison was not knowing how to warn people or what to look for. In an exclusive interview with a BBC's Salisbury Poisoning podcast, he said, quote, to leave that lying around anywhere on foreign soil is the most unbelievably reckless disregard for human life I've ever witnessed, end quote. The poison is suspected of being stored in a perfume bottle, and the Russian government still has denied any involvement, as new details are starting to come out about the case. Next, we turned to South America, where in Brazil, there's been a slight shift to the right demonstrated through the exit polls from the city elections, though this brand of right-winger is more moderate than the famous right-wing president Bolsonaro. From Reuters, quote, the conservative movement that Bolsonaro started in Brazil has outgrown him, said Leonardo Baltrio, a political scientist at Think Policy Consultancy. The right of center parties want to have Bolsonaro as their ally because he draws crowds of right-wingers, but they do not want his leadership, Barreto said, end quote. Even the endorsement of current President Lula da Silva was not enough to get some mayors over the finish line, with only 2 leftist mayors being elected out of the 26 elections. Next, we turn to Africa, where a bombing in the country of Chad has led to the death of 40 soldiers. The attack took place on a military base with stores of ammunition that were stolen and seized during the assault. From BBC, quote, President Matam Debi has ordered a counter mission to track down the culprits, according to the statement from his office. The attack purportedly happened on an island called Barakam, in a vast marshy region that was once covered by the waters of Lake Chad before its dramatic shrinking in recent decades. No suspects for Sunday's attack are named in the presidency's statement, but the area is close to the border zones of Nigeria and Niger, where Islamist militants are known to operate, end quote. Though Chad has been a longtime partner with the West, they have begun to expand their relationship with Russia as they seek to settle the unrest in the region. Across the Atlantic in Canada, there is a rally after 5 days of downward movement in the market, and it was actually such a rally upwards that it recouped most of the losses from that negative growth. This rally was mainly fueled by the financial sector, consumer goods, and medical services. From Reuters, quote, the S&P TSX Composite Index ended the day up 88.96 points, or roughly 0.36%. Or, put another way, roughly 24,552 and 63 was the closing number. Quote, almost recouping losses of the last 2 trading sessions. The advance, which was largely broad-based, was primarily led by healthcare, financials, and consumer goods, each of which were either above or just around 1% up. Analysts said consumer confidence was growing stronger on the back of falling inflation and easing interest rates, which prompted buying activity across sectors despite a drop in crude oil prices, end quote. These are signs of strength in the market, and they have provided a temporary relief and boost in faith of the market, while also raising speculation about the likelihood of more rate decreases in the future. Next, we come to China, where the actions of the government in Shanghai has left some to wonder if there is an official policy against Halloween, from forced removal of costumes to advisory statements from local universities. From BBC, quote, witnesses have told the BBC they saw police dispersing crowds of costume revelers on the streets of Shanghai, while photos of apparent arrests have been spread on social media. Authorities have yet to comment, end quote. Though many of the other reports on the crackdowns are unsubstantiated, it has not been outside the scope of possibility in the past, such as in 2014 when police similarly crack down on costumed individuals in public in China. Finally, to Australia, where for the 4th year in a row, the Australia Central Bank has lost money. From Reuters, quote, the 4.2 billion Australian dollar loss for the year that ended in June 30th arises because the interest the bank earns on its portfolio of bonds and other assets, much of which was acquired at rock bottom interest rates during the pandemic, is far below the amount it pays in commercial bank depositors. The cumulative losses, which began in 2021, have wiped out the bank's equity, although this does not affect monetary policy. The bank's negative equity position was roughly 20.4 billion Australian dollars on June 30th. End quote. And if you want to check out any of the articles from today, they'll all be linked in the description below that like and subscribe button. Also, if you want to check out the podcast, it comes out on Monday, Wednesday, Friday over here at the YouTube channel and on the same RSS feed. And if you want to check out the Twitter tirade, that comes out over at the Twitter handle at Your Daily Flip. Every Tuesday, Thursday around the same time. That's a little bit more off the top of the head, less scripted. So with all that said, there's only one more thing to say. Stay safe. Don't die.